fun. We get to talk about relationships in church. Yeah, love it. How's your guys' week so far? I mean, last week. 10 out of 10. It's good. It's good. Everybody else?
Yeah.
It's alright? It was a yeah? That's good, that's good. I had a pretty good week. I ate tacos 3 out of 7 nights.
Wow.
Unheard of in my life prior to this week, so I'm pretty excited about my taco consumption. I also had ice cream 4 out of 7 nights. Trying to hit every night, so pretty weak there. Last week I had 5 out of 7, 4. I'm going down. I'm going to step it up, guys. Don't worry. We're going to get there, okay? If you want to join me in this ice cream mission,
I might be able to.
go ahead. I got nothing else to say about that. You know, I'm probably going to get real wide within the next couple years, but I'm committed, okay? Let's do it. All right, so we're in the second week of the relationship series. We're talking about dating tonight. Last week we talked about being single and how it's good to be single. It's okay to be single. And then we gave some tips about how to, what to do when you're single, when you're prepping for being in a relationship. And so tonight we're talking about relationships and dating in particular. And sometimes relationships, dating can have kind of a negative taboo about them. You know, people are like, dating is, it's gonna be hard. You're gonna struggle with things. There's gonna be temptations, things like that. The first thing I'm gonna say tonight is that relationships should draw you closer to God and not closer to sin. Relationships should draw you closer to God, not closer to sin. In a relationship, the caring that you feel for each other, the love that you have for each other, the times you're going to forgive each other and have grace for each other, the intimacy, the closeness, all those things are kind of a shadow of what God has for us. So they give us a little glimpse into how God cares and loves us and forgives us and the relationship that we can have with God. Now, relationships that are all about selfish and are all about using the other person, well then we're not having a good example of God and whatnot, right? But a relationship where God is at the center, that's going to actually draw us closer to God. So tonight I want to go over some tips and how to do that, how to date in a way that honors God. From the Bible, some advice, things like that. So remember, last week we talked about the purpose of dating being, we want to find somebody to marry. That's the end term goal. We want to have that as an idea. But also, I mean, if you're going to date someone, you're on your first date, you don't have to know you're going to marry them right away. That's kind of impossible. So you can still date people and figure it out. That's what relationships are for. Figuring out, finding out if you are compatible. That's why we're dating, right? For marriage, right? Right. I saw some nods. That's good. That's good. So I want to talk about how to date for marriage. And what I did was I broke it into kind of two different things. Because dating encompasses a pretty long period of time. So I broke it into the early stages of dating and then the late stages of dating. Okay? What exactly that is, years-wise, we can't exactly say. Some relationships are going to progress at different speeds than other ones, right? Some are going to take longer, some are going to take real short. So, short-term, long-term, just where you're at is where you're at. You know where you're at, all right? Sounds good. Early dating stages is where we're going to start. These are things when you've just started out, right? The first one that I want to say about if you're in the early dating stages is do have fun. If you're not having fun, why do you even date? What do you do? Come on. You're in the early relationship, early stages. You're not having fun. You're fighting all the time. You might want to reconsider dating that person. You shouldn't be fighting right off the bat. You should be having all kinds of fun together. When you're in the early stages, you're in that phase where your eyes light up, you get all nervous and giddy around each other. You go on a date to a nice restaurant, but your stomach's twisting and turning because you're so nervous because they look so pretty and you can't even eat anyway. And then, all that kind of stuff. It's the best. You're sending texts all day long. You're waiting for their text all day long. I heard a term, this is what it's called, guys. Textpectation. This is when you've sent a text and now you're eagerly awaiting the response. You know what I'm talking about. You're just like checking your phone every 3 seconds and you're like, did they reply? Did they reply? Did they reply? Textpectation. Does anybody here suffer from nervous anxiety textpectation? It's It's good to know. I didn't mean to laugh. It's not something to laugh, but I got it too. You want to know what they're going to say, all right? But my point with this is, do have fun. Is that early relationships? Sometimes you see people who are in early relationships, and it's like they're not even having fun. They don't even like each other. They're arguing all the time already. I think we gotta have, like, the early stages are meant to be fun. Okay? Enjoy the giddy stages. The next one I got is don't hibernate. Hibernating. It's when a person enters a relationship and they seemingly just kind of slip into this dormant state of being invisible to all their friends because they're with their relationship partner the whole time. You know what I'm talking about. So a person ignores their friends and they just zone in on their boyfriend or girlfriend, and that's all they see. That's all they hang out with. So I'm saying, don't do that. You know, you shouldn't be doing that. Our friends will never hear from you again. You know, so you don't want to do that. It's very easy to let this happen because when you enter a relationship and you're having a great time, you're having fun, you just want to see them all the time. You want to hang out with them all the time. You finally found someone who likes you, so hang out with them all the time, right? But it's easy to make happen, but be intentional, don't make it happen. The reason I say that is two reasons. The first is, if you've ever been on the other side of that, where your friend gets in a relationship and then they disappear off the face of the planet Earth, you're kind of like, oh man, I lost my friend. They're gone. What happened? And now they just hang out with them. It's kind of annoying. You don't really like them that much, right? You missed them. You got left behind. It's a little bit rude. And what can actually happen is, like, friendships can really be hurt when things like that happen. You know, it's like friends are forever. Remember your friends, guys. The second point is community is very important in a life that follows Jesus. So if we find ourselves in a relationship, we zone in and our relationship is all that we have, we're missing out on community, which is a big part of following Jesus and knowing a relationship with God and a community of believers like that. So we need community. We need to have other friends and believers to talk to keep in step with God, to talk about our relationship with, so that we can, talk these things out. You're going to come into times where things aren't going to make sense, and you're going to have to figure things out. And sometimes you feel like you got to figure it all out on your own because it's your relationship. But it's so much better to have a solid community that you're able to go and share that with someone and get advice on and learn that way together. Hebrews 10, verse 24-25 says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another." The Bible is always telling us to meet together, to hang out together, to talk together, to share meals together, to be with each other, things like that, to stir one another up. So relationships are definitely awesome, but we don't want to let that just be all that we have. We don't want to let it pull you out of community. All right. So some quick tips on how to avoid hibernating. How do you how do you avoid it? One, don't spend every waking second together. Okay? You're not married yet. You can have some time apart, you can do your own thing. Just because you are in a relationship doesn't mean you are done growing personally yet. So don't spend every second together. If you have to, designate, at least one day a week where you're like, let's not hang out this day. We're going to do our own thing for this day. Just not every waking minute. The second one is try not to tunnel vision on that person in group settings. You show up somewhere in group setting, you see Bay, and it's like, oh my goodness, I've missed you so much. All you want to do is talk to them. Of course you want to talk to them. You like them the most out of everyone. That's why you're dating. But you're in a group setting, these are other friends here, you don't see them all the time. So go hang out with your other friends to try not to tunnel vision, and it's easy to tunnel vision. Try not to do it. Talk with your friends, you don't see that often, that kind of thing. All right. And my last one was keep wise counsel. Wise counsel. All right. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Walk with the wise, become wise. I bring this up because when you do go to your friends for advice and help and stuff, Make it wise friends that you go to, you know? People you go to, it matters who you're going to hear. If you choose non-Christian friends, they're most likely going to give you non-Christian advice. Pretty straightforward. So choose wise people. If you're looking for help and you're looking for help, you want to go to your wise friends. But in order for that to work, which is going to bring us to our next do, we need to communicate. Do, communicate. Communicating is it's the lifeblood of every relationship. It's the oil that makes that car run smooth. You know what I mean? Yeah, come on, Jason. Tell me about oil. I don't know anything. I need a car. Let's get it. The communication is like so key. With proper communication, then relationships are going to succeed. It sounds pretty simple, but it's one of the biggest reasons why couples break up, because there's a breakdown of communication and there's a misunderstanding, that kind of thing. If you are in the super duper early stages of a relationship and you need to do a certain communication called DTR, I highly recommend it. Define the relationship. You know, you're in those stages like, are we something? Are we not? You know, we're talking all day long, but I don't know yet. Like DTR, define the relationship. It's great. I'm a big fan. It clears it up. What are we? Cleared up. So much confusion can be cleared up by DTR. Secondly, communication is the best way to get to know somebody, obviously. But yet, sometimes we find ourselves not communicating enough, and all we're doing is making out on the couch all day long. So take a little break. Is how you not only sort things out if there are any problems, but it's how you set things up for the future. So if you got, what are your plans? What do you want to do in life? Where do you plan to be later? Communication is where you lay all those things out, and you tell them, and then you get on the same page, you set yourselves up for the future. The next one I got is don't put the cart before the horse. I was going to get a graphic, and I totally forgot, but just imagine it in your brain, okay? You know, like a horse usually pulls a cart. Now imagine the cart in front of the horse. The horse is just headbutting it. It's awkward, it's all wrong. The point is, don't get things out of order. Don't rush things, don't skip steps, don't get things out of order. Song of Songs 8 verse 4 says, do not arouse or awaken love before it so desires. We gotta respect the process. You gotta respect the process. Don't rush it. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't skip steps, right? Don't jump ahead when you're not ready. Don't put the cart before the horse. Don't grow your relationship too fast in one area when every area is not able to grow in that same capacity. Whether it's, there's different categories, right? There's like, we grow our relationship in many different ways. It can be sexually is one of them, but it's also emotionally, it's socially, financially. These are all things that eventually in a relationship we're going to combine. And when they're all combined, we call that marriage, right? So they should all progress equally, and then marriage is where they all come together. But there's a process. So when we put things out of order, or we rush one over the other, now one area has gotten too connected, where the other ones aren't ready to match that much of a connection. And then if there's a split, then it really hurts way more because something has been grown too much, and the rest was not grown in a way that's going to last. Does that make sense? Yeah. But we are still talking about the early stages too. So I want to encourage you, like you're in the early stages, just enjoy the early stages. Have fun. It's a good time. Enjoy each other. Don't rush it. I said this yesterday, or not yesterday, last week, but I'm saying it again. I've never heard someone say, I wish I did it all faster. Just take it slow, take it easy, enjoy where you're at. All right. I forgot to say this. We have on your chairs, you have little cards, you got a pen, right? The point of that is to ask questions. While we're in the sermon, if you hear something and you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but what about this? Or what about that? Or what if this is the case? Or maybe you just have your whole own question that I did not cover at all. Write that down, and then there's a box right back there. It's pink. It's got a smiley face on it and a yellow hat. Put your card in there, and then in 3 weeks, we're going to be doing a Q&A where we're going to be answering it. Hopefully, we will answer yours. So if you have a question, you got something, write down, put it in there, all right? I'm going to do a little mid-sermon recap, okay? We're going to switch from the early stages to the late stages a second. Let's recap where we are so far, all right? Number 1, do have fun. Don't hibernate. Do communicate. Don't put the cart before the horse. You with me? Make sense? All right. You guys ready for part 2? Long-term dating. First point. Don't have sex. Don't do it. Don't do it. We're not supposed to do it. Don't do it. In regards to this, we're going to have a whole sermon about sex in 2 weeks, so I'm not going to lay it all out for you, because it's going to be coming good that night. You got lots of stuff coming at you that night. But tonight I wanted to say that, first of all, God is not against sex. God is for sex. God created sex. He knows what it's about. He knows how great it is. He created it. But He created it with a design and a purpose. And He understands the temptations that go along with it. But he made it for marriage. That's why He made it. To be in marriage, not for dating relationships, meant for marriage. Some people will question, where in the Bible does it exactly say that we can't have sex outside of marriage? Or before marriage. Where does it say that? Interesting enough, it's one of the 10 Commandments. It's kind of sneakily snuck in there, if you've never heard it before. But it's do not commit adultery. And adultery is interesting because in the original text, this word adultery was a Greek word called porneia, and that word, it didn't just mean what adultery means, but it meant any sex outside of marriage. So adultery kind of just means like if you cheat on your spouse, right? So you already have to be married. But any sex outside of marriage is a lot more encompassing. It includes sex before marriage, right? With the real bottom line being sex is created for marriage. Yeah? Hebrews 13 verse 4 also says, honor marriage and guard the sacredness of sexual intimacy between wife and husband. God draws a firm line against casual and illicit sex. The Bible. It's pretty clear, sometimes. That's all I'm going to say for now. We got a whole sermon about coming up, alright? Be there. It's going to be amazing. I'm excited. Awesome. Alright. Often our response to something like this, you can't have sex, is like, oh, why is the Bible limiting me? It's like, why can't I just do things that I want to do? But I want to encourage you to look at it another way, which brings me to my next point, which is do honor each other. Do honor each other. 1 Timothy 5 verse 2 says, treat older women as you would your mother, and treat younger women with all purity as you would your own sister. This idea of treating each other with purity and honoring each other. And the goal here is that we honor each other in relationships and we keep our purity. Because long term, eventually, you can get into your wedding night bed with your spouse. And you want to approach that night with purity. You want to approach that night with the righteousness of God. You know what I'm saying? Come on. So we achieve that by honoring each other. And one way to look at it is you want to honor your future spouse and you want to honor your partner's future spouse as well. And to wrap your brain around that, think about it this way, like think about you're later in your life, you found your spouse, you know, you're talking about your exes, you're talking about their exes, these kind of things. How do you want to be able to tell those stories? And what do you want to hear from their stories? Because nobody wants to hear that it was just all about sex and that's all it was, and or it's over-sexualized, or there was abuse involved, or no, they didn't treat you right. You know, we want to be able to say we treated our exes with honor, with purity, and we did it right. You know, that's what we want to do. No one wants to hear about that it left them hurt. So when we're in our relationships now, we want to think about our future spouses and we want to honor them by treating our current partners correct. And this idea of future spouse is weird because you gotta think the person I'm dating is gonna be my future spouse, right? Because we're dating for marriage, right? But you don't know. They might not be. We're not married yet, okay? They're not your spouse yet, so know where you're at. Sometimes people can mistake dating, and they think this person is mine forever. And they've skipped into that step already. But they're not your spouse, not yet. They are someone's future spouse. Maybe yours, but maybe not. So treat them with the honor and respect towards their future spouse one day. So the dating stage, we want to honor them. As well as not only do we want to honor them, but we want to honor God through what we're doing. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 13 says, you know the old saying, first you eat to live, and then you live to eat. Tacos. Well, it may be true that the body is only a temporary thing, but that's no excuse for stuffing your body with food, crap, or indulging it with sex. Since the master honors you with a body, honor him with your body. So when we choose to live in accordance with God's ways, it honors him. Like he's asked us, told us, directed us these ways. When we choose to say, yeah, God, I'm going to live the way you want, we're honoring God. And we're able to honor God with our bodies. So the next thing is, if sex outside of marriage is wrong, we're supposed to honor our future spouse. We're supposed to honor God. The way to do that is set boundaries. Set boundaries between each other. Okay? We got to set up boundaries in our physical relationships. We know that God draws this line against premarital sex and casual sex and things like that. But what about the other things, right? And how do we set up a proper boundary? This next part, this is not in the Bible. This is just a little something that I came up with. And it has to do with the progression of a physical relationship 2018. Okay, it's a 10-step process. It starts with flirting. Point number 1, flirting, right? Yeah, what up, girl? Just flirting. That's all it is. Number 2, you get hugging. Little hug action. You're not quite ready to kiss yet, so you hug goodbye, right? You're hugging a lot. Feels nice. Number 3, you're holding hands, which also has its mini stages of holding hands like this and holding hands like fingers interlocked. Woo! That's a whole nother level. Number 4, light kiss. We're talking a little peck action, end of the day, just a little, and you're done, you can leave. Number 5, heavy kiss. This one lasts a little longer, get some movement in there maybe. Number 6, French kiss / necking. I find it hilarious when people say necking. Man, we gotta bring that back. This is one of the things, French, these are the things that get a little sloppy. There's some tongue action in there. Lasts a long time. Number 7, light petting, which is on top of the clothes, touching all over on top of the clothes. Number 8, heavy petting, which is under the clothes. One time I heard this described as Star Trek touching, going boldly where no hand has gone before. Number 9, oral sex, and number 10, sexual intercourse. Okay, so this is a process. It's escalating here. But I can tell you, it's a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope. It's a whole lot easier going forward than it is going backwards on this scale. The farther you get, the easier it is to go even further. That's how slippery slopes work. The harder it is to go back. Once you start necking, it's hard to go back to pecking. Right? It's hard because you're already there, Once you start heavy petting, it's hard to go back to just holding hands, and that's it. So it's a lot easier to go forward. It's a slippery slope, okay? Now the key to setting up boundaries is just communicating, talking about it, talking with each other. What are our boundaries? Where are you at? How far is too far? What do you want to say for marriage? Things like that. If you don't talk about boundaries, you will most likely cross them. They haven't been talked about. And in the heat of the moment, it's very hard to stop these things. So you talk about them beforehand, set them up. If you don't know your boundaries, you're like, I don't even know what I think, then talk about it with the other person too. Read your Bible together, pray together, look into these verses for yourself and see where you lie. The purpose of these boundaries too is not to guilt us or shame us and be like, oh my goodness, I'm going too far or something like that. It's not to make us feel sad because we can't do the things we want to do, but it's meant to honor God. We honor God in our relationships. We honor Him by setting up a boundary with our physical body, right? So we want to honor God and we want to honor our future spouse with purity. Now, what if you've gone too far already in your relationship? What if you've already had sex outside of marriage? It's not too late to be made right again. It's not too late to be forgiven. It's not too late to be made pure again. The beautiful thing about a relationship with God is that He is a God of second chances. He gives you another opportunity. Regardless of your sexual history, the power of God is the greatest forgiveness you will have ever experienced. And He can see you as a virgin again today if you ask Him for that. Pure and white as snow. Because God is a redeemer. God gives us a second chance, gives us a new life in Him. So even if you've chosen to have sex outside of marriage, or if sex was a result of something else, if it was abuse or it wasn't your choice or something like that, Christ can see you as a virgin again today. It doesn't have to be held against you. 1 Corinthians 13 tells us about God's awesome power to love. It says, 13 verse 5, it says, love keeps no record of wrong. God keeps no record of your wrongs. Because of Christ, He says you can be set free. You can be cleansed today. In 1 John 1 verse 9, it says, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. I think this is huge because today, you can be made clean again. You can be forgiven fully, wholeheartedly, right now. You can make a commitment to God to say, I want a new life in you, and I want to do things right this time. I want to honor you with my body this time. You can choose to have Him. You can choose to say, I'm going to refrain from sexual activity outside of marriage, and I want to do things right this time. And God offers you that opportunity. And oftentimes we see sex and sexual sin as a whole other brand of sin. We're we know God forgives all sin, but then we're like, of course He forgives me for stealing that candy from that grocery store, but sex, God, He must not be happy with me. But all sin is sin, and God forgives all sin equally. We seek forgiveness, God offers it, and sexual sin is the same, it fits in that same category. And another thing to note is God's grace is so much bigger than your sexual sin. For us to think my sexual sin is too big for God to forgive, well, we're messing something up in our brain, because God's grace is so much bigger than anything that we can do. So let today be the day that you are set free from guilt and shame, and that you choose to live a life that honors Him. The next little part I got here is, don't say I love you until the next words out of your mouth are, will you marry me? No one's nodding. Beyonce wrote a song about this. Do you guys know it? If you like it, then you should have put a ring on. If you like it, then you should have. You know it. This little tidbit of relationship advice is not found in the Bible, but I heard this from my youth pastor growing up, and I loved it, and I'm all about it too, because it makes a lot of sense. There are only two people I know that have successfully pulled this off. Simon Gow, Michael Chinchilla. Those are my two pastors growing up, so you got to be in on that. That's high quality. Two of the most stand-up dudes I've ever met, all right? But let me explain why I say this, kid. The reason I say this is because I've seen a lot of broken hearts. I've seen a lot of people get hurt. I've seen a lot of people say I love you and then wind up hurt. And it's the result of people believing that they are in love or saying that they are in love only to wind up hurt, only to realize they weren't. I've told girls I love them. They've told me they love me back, and then we didn't end up together. So then I wonder, well, what was that then? Was that love or not? and like call me sensitive, but I don't like it when people say they love me and then they leave me. What? Is that just me?
No, that's good.
You guys like that? No. So why are we doing it? Stop. Shouldn't love mean forever? Is that what love is? Is that old-fashioned, or is that what love is? When you love someone, to me, you promise to stand by them, and it's a commitment, and it means forever, and it has action behind it. So if you are taking notes, put a big, bold star on this one, quadruple underline it, tattoo it on your forehead. Love is a commitment. Love is a commitment. There's different aspects to love, and one of them is it's a commitment. So saying I love you is not just saying those words, it's not just a feeling in that very moment, but it has a commitment attached to it as well. And there's action that comes with it as well. When the Bible talks about the love that God has for us, and we look at that as our example of what love has, it's unrelenting, it's unconditional, it never stops, it's committed to us eternally, and it's selfless. In 1 John 4 verse 10, it says, "This is real love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins." Now the love that God has for us has been a commitment to us for the entire history of the human race. He loved us, we sin, and yet He loves us, He forgives us, He continues to love us always. He never stops pursuing us. He's got this crazy, never-ending grace for us, always forgives us. He loves us forever. He takes action in that He sends Jesus to die for our sins. When things got so messed up and wrong, He takes action Himself to make it right. Now today in our world, you can say I love you, you mean two totally different things. Right? You can say I love you, you can say I love lots of different things and mean lots of different things. You can say I love the beach. You say I love tacos. You say I love my wife. And those are very different things, right? When someone says I love my wife or I love my husband, that's completely different. Like that's a commitment. It means I will love you forever. I love you no matter what. I'll love you in every season. When I say I love tacos, well, I'm kind of sick of tacos for 3 times in a week, so this is different, right? I'm not going to always love tacos. I'm going to want tacos all the time. It's a different kind of love. So when we say we love someone, we should think about what those words mean and what comes along with them. And the reason I say it's a good idea to wait to say that to someone is because very often, especially in the early stages, we can feel like we are in love. We get the butterflies, you get excitement, it feels a lot like love, but we might be before the stage of commitment and action. And if the commitment and action aren't there as well, I believe you should have all 3 if you're going to be saying that you love somebody. So I think let's use the words I love you with everything that it means. Use them fully. Don't devalue those words. Use them for exactly what they mean. And let our definition of what the word love means be derived from what the Bible says about love, from what God shows us about love. And that should be our definition of love. Maybe you're already in a relationship and you say you love each other every single day. So what now? Right? That's okay, but I encourage you to think about what those words mean. Think about what it means when you're saying those words, and even discuss it between the 2 of you. My goal with this point is really to raise our standard of what those words mean when we say them to somebody, and not just throw them around and, like I say, end up in hurt and things like that. So now you might go home tonight, you might talk to your boyfriend or girlfriend and be like, hey, listen, baby, now I know what love is, and I love you. Well, you're saying that, the next thing you have to say is, you gotta get married. So before you get married, at least listen to what Matt Andrews has to say about marriage tomorrow. I mean, next week. Okay? Come on. So don't get engaged tonight. Thank you. So that's all I got for today, these main points. Let's recap. I'm going to invite the band up. What we had do have fun, don't hibernate, do communicate, don't put the horse, don't put the cart before the horse. It's tricky one. Don't have sex, do honor each other, Do set boundaries, and don't say I love you to the next words out of your mouth. Or will you marry me? All right. We talked about this last week, and I'd like to bring it up again, but it's that we can learn a lot about relationships from the people we date and things like that. But God created us to be in a relationship with Him, to experience this intimacy and this love with Him. And tonight I want to ask you, what does your relationship with God look like? Is it thriving? Is it great? Is it amazing? Or to understand and receive His love. So tonight is a night where we're able to say, I want to receive God's love. Now, Christianity is not all like do's and don'ts. I know I did a whole bunch of do's and don'ts tonight, but these are a response to knowing God's love in our life, to knowing like, God, I understand what you did for me and I love you, and now I want to follow you as best that I can. So these are kind of pro tips to follow Him as best as we can. These are not things that are going to define our acceptance or God's love for us, but they're ways that we can follow Him closer. But the bottom line is that God forgives us of all of our sin, and it's only by our faith that we get to know His love. It's only by our faith. It's not based on how perfectly we can follow these things, but it's just based on us and our faith in Him. So if you don't know God's love personally, then I would encourage you to begin a relationship with Him tonight. And by just simply saying, I want to know you, God. I want to enter into a relationship with you tonight. And the love that we get through knowing God, the love that we receive, the love we come to know, will improve all of our other loving relationships through family, friends, and through our relationships and our spouse to be one day. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was maybe, like I was saying earlier, maybe that you have had sex outside of marriage, and tonight could be a night where you could be made new, where you can be wiped clean, where you can leave the guilt and shame behind and accept the new life that God has for you and be forgiven. Tonight, will you ask Him for forgiveness? That's something that we each have to do. Something that you have to do in your heart is ask Him for forgiveness. God is offering you a second chance, a new life in Him, and you can have it tonight. Tonight could be a night where we receive this forgiveness, and it could be a night where we commit to God, saying, God, I receive what you have for me. I want to be made new. I want a relationship with you, and I want to honor you with my life going forward. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to sing through a song. We're going to have leaders in the back sides, and they're there to pray with you or talk to you about anything that has stuck out tonight or anything that we've talked about. So I encourage you to think about what your relationship with God is like, to think about these things that we talked about tonight, and if there's anything that you want to talk more about, come and talk to one of us, and we would love to pray with you and talk more about it. Let's sing, guys. Thanks.